Hey, Hi, everyone. It's Veteran Thomas here with Town Residential and Collab Real Estate Services. I wanted to walk you through this month's real estate statistics, going back and looking at August and seeing the sales numbers, inventory numbers, pricing, all kinds of different statistics that will paint a bit of a picture in terms of where the real estate market is heading year over year, month over month. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard that the Bank of Canada recently lowered their interest rates again by 1/4% in an attempt to, kind of spark a bit of economic activity in areas where they're seeing inflation kind of come under control. Hopefully, that's going to have a bit of an impact on affordability within the Calgary market and nationwide as well. But we'll have a look at, what's happening beyond that. That's a pretty fresh change, if you will. So the outcome of that will kind of percolate over the next few months, but we'll just jump right in and then have a look at how August did in the Calgary market. All right, let's have a look at sales numbers first. So sales are down and quite dramatically year over year. The first year over year decline actually in about 10 years. There's been a few, blips here and there, if you will, over the course of the last 10 years, but this is the true first and substantial decline in terms of sales numbers for the month of August. Historically speaking, it just kind of kept pretty consistent, and then over the last three or so years, it's been definitely on the rise, but we are seeing a downward trend for 2024. 2,186 sales in the month of August. That's a 20% decrease roughly year over year from that 2716 mark that we saw in 2023. So substantially fewer sales. Now let's look at the actual sales month to month. So going back from August into July into June, back 12 months to see basically what the year has been doing. Paints a bit of a different picture, but honestly, this is pretty typical, I would say. Sales are cyclical throughout the course of the year. We typically see a very low sales number in the December timeframe, obviously with the holidays and everything else. And then that sort of ramps up to a peak, usually in May. So this is very much in alignment with what we normally see. And then there's a gradual drop off there, which you can sort of see continuing there, again, dipping in December. So we expect the same type of thing to happen here, where these sales numbers will definitely dip by the time we get to December. What's interesting, though, is if we compare where we are today in August in terms of that dip at 2186 and where we were a year ago in August in terms of that dip at 2716, we have a long ways to go in terms of coming down. So what we can expect is that December numbers will likely be substantially lower than this 1363 that we saw a year ago, but time will truly tell where that ends up. In terms of what's selling, what's not selling, typical thing is happening that we've seen over the last probably 2 to 3 years, where there's a shift in terms of what people are purchasing. A shift from more expensive properties to slightly cheaper ones, as well as a lot of interest in terms of investment in the Calgary market. So as it pertains to that, the most notable piece here is the 604 sales that we saw last month in the apartment sector. This is actually about triple what we are used to for this month and that property type if we look back about 3 or 4 years. Obviously, that's been shifting, affordability, everything else, foreign investment into the rental market. Rental inventory is still quite low. If you look on Rent Faster or otherwise, you'll see that there's not really much to choose from a rental standpoint. And the nice properties that become available become rented very quickly with, all kinds of stories you hear about lineups outside of the building and things like that. So apartments are selling. They definitely are. And with the increased sales activity, their prices are going through the roof as well, as far as the apartments go. Row townhouse type properties, very similar sort of thing, not as hot. Again, there's quite a variance there in townhouses and row style buildings where, you can get a townhouse for $400,000 in some areas of the city. And, if you're looking at maybe a townhouse that's an infill type community or whatnot, where they built 3 or 4 side by sides, you're looking at much higher price points there. So This is a pretty vast, I guess, a property type. So you're not seeing as much of an increase there, but definitely, pretty high numbers in comparison to how many of these exist versus how many detached properties exist in the city. Detached numbers are holding pretty strong in terms of sales, but definitely the most notable part here is what the apartments are doing. All right, so that's sales in general. So just to summarize, sales have come down and substantially so. So let's look at inventory then. So how is the decrease in sales affecting inventory? So this green line that you see at the top here, that's the total supply available in the month of August going back 10 years. And then the bottom line is the sales demand, how many properties sold in the month of August going back a year. So kind of to compare what's on the market total versus what is selling in that month to see, the balance of that. What we see here is that historically there's a huge gap between, what's the total supply and what sells in a month. And, a situation where the gap is that big is a strong buyer's market. What we were getting to here is a historically severe seller's market, if you will, where the number of properties that were on the market in total were very close to the number of properties that sold in just a month. So the months of supply, I think it actually dipped below 1 at some point in 2023 there. For August, it was still slightly above 1, if you will, a few more properties available than actually sold. But 2023 was definitely a historic year for supply versus demand problems, if you will, resulting in a very polarizing seller's market. We're seeing that turn around with the increase in total supply, inventory-wise, 4,487 properties versus 3,267 the year before. No math whiz, but I believe that's about a 33% increase in terms of inventory. At the same time, we talked about the decrease in terms of sales. So now we're seeing a rather large gap here where we went from, these numbers being virtually identical to now, being separated by almost 2x, if you will, 4,487 versus 2,186. So lots of inventory at this point. I wouldn't say lots, but more than we're used to. And at the same time, sales numbers coming down. All right, let's have a look at new listings. Are people actually selling their homes and other property types? So yes, total new listings dramatically, almost through the roof, exponential curve type thing here. Last 3 years, people are historically listing more and more in the month of August. Whereas before that, even though there's dips up and down due to, economic situations and things like that, we're looking at a healthy mark of around 2,700 properties being listed in the month of August. We saw almost 1,000 more than that in August 2024 at over 3,500 properties being listed. So lots of new listings, raising inventory, and overall high inventory numbers coupled with low sales numbers, or at least decreasing sales numbers. So what does that mean for prices? Well, let's have a look. August 2024, the benchmark property in Calgary was just over $600,000. The benchmark property, for those that don't know, it's sort of a typical property in the city of Calgary. So you're looking at your 3-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom, 2,200 square foot, 2-story is usually the best way I like to describe a benchmark property. Of course, that type of property could be much different prices from one community to another. Think of this as a bit of an average, if you will. It is considered a benchmark just based on attributes and not necessarily average in terms of numbers. But benchmark, just consider it a reliable average, I suppose. So just over $600,000 for the benchmark price for August. How does that compare to the year before? 566 the year before, 525 the year before that, 473 the year before that, and 427 the year before that. So in the last 4 years, we've seen the benchmark price in Calgary go from $427,000 to over $600,000, roughly $170,000 increase in terms of benchmark price. So if you've got one of those average properties, you've got $150,000 to $170,000 more equity on average than you did 4 years ago. So good news for everybody, sitting on affordable mortgages, investment properties, even their own personal primary residences. In terms of equity is always good to have. Definitely some accumulation there. In terms of trends, though, we're still seeing, as we're looking at here, doesn't seem that prices are moving much. But remember, this is year over year. This trend that we're seeing reverse almost on us here in the last few months wouldn't be reflected in this graph. Where it would be reflected is the month over month prices. So we can see, again, almost an exponential increase in prices going back to December of last year. We can see that in January, you look at 567, and then 582, 590, 595, over 600 in May, well over 600 in June. And all of a sudden in July, we're starting to see a decrease. So you can see this curve start to turn around here in terms of prices. I expect this is going to continue for all the reasons we just talked about. Lower sales numbers, higher inventory, more choice for buyers. So we can expect this to continue trending down. How far? Will things recover to 565? Will things recover to, you know, the numbers we saw 2-3 years ago even? Not likely, but time will tell. All right, let's look at days on market. So if you were looking at listing today, given everything we talked about, how does that affect your ability to sell? Your ability to sell is still really good, especially if you have a desirable property in a desirable community, I would say. You'll likely sell your home in, you know, a week or two. Homes are pretty much selling themselves these days with the proper marketing, getting eyes on the listing, professional pictures, photographs, and working with a reputable agent that can get the word out and get as much activity on your property as possible. Having said that, though, properties are selling very quickly, but we are seeing a bit of a reversal here as well. We're sticking to around the 20 days to sell, looking at March, April, May, and June of this year. And that's increasing very quickly. We're almost at a month on average for a property to sell. And remember, this is an average. So there are some properties out there taking a couple months to sell even, which we haven't seen much in the last year or so. Having said that, you know, 27 days in terms of days on market is still extremely low. Properties are selling very quickly. Remember, this does include the conditional period, which is typically about 10 days to remove financing conditions, things like that. A lot of properties are selling without conditions these days due to the high demand and everything else, but many are still conditional type sales. So this number does include that conditional period. So really, you're looking at probably about a 20-day average to get that accepted offer. Okay. So where are we in terms of a buyer's market or a seller's market? Well, it's still heavily a seller's market. Typically, somewhere between the 3 and 6 months of inventory is what we would consider a balanced or a healthy market. We're still looking at 2 months of inventory. And what that basically means is that it would take just over 2 months at the current sales rate that we saw in August. It would take just over 2 months to sell the inventory that's currently available or was available as of the beginning of September. Like I said, we were close to that 1 month of inventory and even below 1 in some areas of the city and some suburbs. But we're looking at over 2 months of inventory now. So there is a definite reversal happening there as well. That's pretty much all I have to show you for this month. If you have any questions about any of the stats that you saw here today or want to discuss anything real estate related, mortgages even, I have very many great contacts I can get you in touch with if you're looking to get a pre-approval done. If you're looking to find out what your home is worth, given all of these numbers and the turnaround, and maybe realizing we might have hit our peak here in terms of prices and it might be time to pull the trigger on selling that property. I know many people out there were just kind of waiting to see how high this goes and try to maximize our returns, if you will. Honestly, I feel that we are seeing a shift here. We are seeing a turnaround. How far prices will come down, it's tough to tell, but it's probably pretty safe to say at the same time that they're probably close to their peak. With that, I'll close this month's real estate update. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to reach out, info@collabrealestate.ca, or give me a call or text anytime before midnight, I would say. 403-483-8269. I'd be happy to take your call, email, or text, and we can chat some more. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.